Hello, welcome to the J+R Movie Podcast. This is episode 9, part 2. We will be discussing the Book of Henry in this video.
Yeah, so the film follows this really smart kid called Henry, who's 12 years old and kind of helps his 11 years old, sorry, and kind of helps his mother out with the bills, his junior at school, really looks after his brother, that kind of thing. And one day when he's watching his neighborhood, he notices his next door neighbor getting abused at night by her stepfather. So he decides that he is going to try and put a stop to it. So he calls Child Protection Services, but it doesn't work, and he's getting these headaches. And suddenly he has a seizure one night, and as it turns out, he's got a brain tumor. Find out after he dies, he's put a plan together to stop the abuse by killing the stepfather. His mother goes along with the plan right up until she's about to shoot him while the school talent show is going on, and she realizes that it's the plan of a child, so decides to confront Glenn instead. Well, I mean, he stumbles upon her, but she confronts him. And she kind of says, "I'm going to go public with this." He says to her, "Who are they going to believe?" And she's basically like, "I'm not. I don't care. The truth is getting out there." And then the principal, who Henry had confessed to, affected by a dance that the daughter was doing in a talent show, and followed through on the abuse accusation. So then Glenn kills himself, and the police show up because he doesn't want to deal with the fallout from that. Susan then gets to legally adopt Christina, who is the daughter, as a member of her own family.
This movie is garbage, and the reason why is the script. This to me is kind of up there with like Serenity and Collateral Beauty. It's just a mind-boggling misfire. But honestly, I think it's a bit more frustrating than those two films. Unlike those two films, this film doesn't have any way of excusing its just sheer craziness. Like, Collateral Beauty at least wasn't set in reality because of that reveal at the end. Serenity wasn't set in reality either. It was set in a video game. You could forgive both of those films for being kind of like silly, but this one doesn't have that excuse. So as a result, you're just left with this film that like doesn't convince on any level, isn't really very coherent, and is also just really frustrating on so many levels.
It was a ridiculous film. It was a ridiculous film. There's no way that a functioning adult is that dependent on a child. Like, it's just not going to happen. It's one of my most annoying movie tropes, because it's just like, unless the adults need to care themselves, there's no way. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that does happen, but it just doesn't seem believable, especially the way that their relationship is. I don't get how she would have functioned before having children.
As part of the film's like just unconvincingness, the film was definitely trying to assert that she wasn't particularly competent as a mother and was a bit neglectful. But to be perfectly honest, she didn't come off as neglectful in the slightest. Like, at worst, she was just late when she was picking them up at school. Other than that, like in the bits where they were trying to show that she was lazy, it was like it was her like playing video games. But it's like, just because somebody takes time off to play some video games doesn't automatically mean that they're like a slacker. And I understand that, like, you know, her letting Henry do all of that like Wall Street stock stuff was, you know, supposed to imply she's too lazy to do it herself. But to be perfectly honest, if Henry is that smart, then I don't really see what the problem is with him doing that. Because, you know, I think to myself, if you're in a family situation and maybe your child is better at doing something than you are, I don't know whether it's believable or not, but I personally wouldn't be opposed to the idea of a kid doing something that they are so much better at.
She seems to have most of the responsibility for Peter, her other child, and actually looking after him. Like, she doesn't seem to really do jack about that, to be honest. She doesn't seem to be financially responsible at all, because she doesn't take at all an active interest in the statements. Doesn't seem to think much about her money, and then seems to just deny problems constantly. I don't buy that an adult can end up like that and be as all right as she is, even if they've got a genius kid.
Henry character is a big issue with this film. To get a bit personal, I really hate the kind of character that he is. I hate the whole child genius trope. I hate the whole like mini adult thing that they sometimes do with child characters. I think it's really insufferable. I think it's really unrealistic as well. And I especially hate it whenever it doesn't show a kid like, having to work to be that smart. Even really intelligent kids aren't just like born intelligent. They have to like learn stuff. They have to like, do stuff in order to get where they are later in life. Already, I didn't like that, but I could have forgiven that if he were likable. Even before we get to the plan, he's totally insufferable as a character. There's like maybe one decent moment where he keeps Peter from getting attacked, like his younger brother from getting attacked. Every line out of his mouth is him being like condescending. It's him being like belittling to his mum or to other people. Like nobody in the film calls him out on this behavior. Like nobody in the film calls him out on how he is. They all love and worship him. Even that one bit where like Peter's getting bullied or whatever, the bully says like, "Oh yeah, you're smart. I like you."
Never how it works. Like that is never how it works. And Henry's the kind of kid that in real life you're just like, oh fuck off. He's like that kind of guy.
The dodgeball line is the very first line he says to somebody, and it's like,
oh, it's a put down. It's like, don't get wrong, good point. Dodgeball is not an Olympic sport. Didn't really have a problem with him pointing that out, to be honest. But it was the way he pointed it out. The way that he did it, he was like proper condescending. He was just like, well, when he finally realizes this, like, oh yeah, obviously this young kid is going to know absolutely everything about the Olympics. He's not just showing a love for a sport he enjoyed. It's a bit like, yes, I get you. Yeah, I probably would have wanted to point that out as a kid myself, to be honest. But at the same time,
when I was a kid, certainly like thought I was smarter and more sensible than other people, but I didn't act superior to others, and I did display that attitude openly towards other kids. I wasn't going around like correcting people and showing off how smart I was. I just kept to myself, because sometimes like that's better than crushing this innocent little boy's dreams, by telling him that. But again, he's even like that towards his mother. And if I'd spoken to my parents in the way that Henry was speaking, to his mother and other people, like my mum or my dad probably would have yelled at me, or would have told me that what I was doing was wrong. Sometimes, like, said the kind of things that Henry has said accidentally without even meaning to. Henry does it intentionally, and nobody calls him out.
Yeah, it's really, really weird, actually.
To the abuse stuff in the film leads me to another big issue that I personally had. It wants to be targeted at both kids and adults.
Both what I like to call the child superhero kind of film, which is where you get a kid who's impossibly genius, trying to suggest kids should aspire to be like this kid. While at the same time, it's trying to handle topics like grief and child abuse. And if it focused on maybe one of those, I still feel like it could have worked. But it doesn't. It's juggling three things at once, to me, that really you shouldn't be juggling at once. I mean, yes, in real life you can be, but it doesn't say anything to me on like basics, which is, oh, don't do anything drastic when you're grieving. Oh, abuse is bad, report it. Clearly, is there like any nuance to it? Like it lacked that nuance, of actually confronting that situation, but properly, because the solution to the police commissioner, abusing his daughter was literally just calling child services.
It's a film that's clearly trying to, like when I say it's trying to be for kids and adults, I'm not just talking about messaging, I'm also talking about tone, because it's trying to, on some level, be a heartwarming family drama and also a dark thriller. But the problem is that it doesn't really do either of them well enough. It creates this mix that's too dark and creepy for children, but also too safe and saccharine for adults.
And there were things that they could have, expanded on as well, that would have taken it in one direction or the other, that I think would have helped it really work. Don't try and blend the tones in this kind of film, because they're so wildly apart. I would have stayed in the hospital a bit longer. Those were some touching scenes in the hospital. I liked the way he was playing with Peter. I liked the way he was trying to, he was trying not to focus on the fact that he was dying by focusing on the finances. I loved that. But what it didn't do was expand on that. It was like 5 minutes, maybe 10 in the sequence. And because it had to then go into service of the dark thriller, you don't feel it.
The reason why I think the film, again, I don't think it like handles its subject matter as well, is twofold. Because on the one hand, the dark stuff is held back by the fact that it also wants to appeal to kids. So therefore it can't get too dark or like violent.
I don't mind the fact that it's not violent as such. It doesn't confront it nearly directly enough.
No, it doesn't. And this is where I'm going to talk about the direction. I feel like Trevorrow's direction and the script were on two completely different wavelengths, because the script is on the wavelength of this is happening, Liz getting abused by her stepfather, right? But what we are shown so often does not match up with that. Like, you could have very easily sold this as a mystery to whether he was even doing anything or not. And that frustrated me because it kept me at an arm's length from actually being able to get invested, because I thought to myself, like, okay, well, what if the two of them misreading the situation? First of all, they seem to kind of not like Glenn from the beginning, like for no reason at all. Like he's just asking them to rake leaves off of his driveway, I think it is. And they're all like, "Oh, Glenn! Oh my God, Mr. Sickleman! Oh, okay, all right." He's being a bit nosy. He's not being that bad. And then when they start trying to lie that he is actually doing something to his stepdaughter, the hints are so vague. The hints are vague in the sense that it almost feels like it's trying to make you wonder if it's not taking place, but the script never does that. The script never tries to go for a mystery angle.
I personally kind of prefer the idea of there being a mystery angle, just because it replicates the complexity of a situation like that, and the kind of gaslighting that goes on, even by the people reporting, because they don't want to report it if it's wrong. That which is a real phenomenon that really screws it up. Cases like this, but the fact that the script and the direction are so mismatched, I agree with you, screws it up completely, because the script never questions Henry's perceptions at all until like well after he's dead. The only time we get any suggestion of Henry maybe not being the most mature, intelligent figure in the film is when Peter says he'd find it funny that I drew a moustache on this picture. It's not questioned to that point, but I actually think Mr. Angle should have been the angle in the script, because that would have made it more compelling and given the mother some more weight in her reluctance to kind of do anything about it. And B, Henry should have been questioned way earlier. I don't care how smart you are, kid. You're a kid. Like, there are things that he doesn't know, which is a great point that the film makes. But it should be questioned at points earlier, not massively, but just a bit. So that even if you just did it a little bit, it would have then made the mystery angle work. And then I think the film would have worked a lot better. It wouldn't be that hard to fix. Have Henry make a small mistake, maybe in the finances. Have Henry have a moment of immaturity and not acting like a child adult, which is what he does throughout the whole film. Let him be immature. And I don't mean like immature with the wife's friend, which, by the way, I'm getting onto a scene about that in a minute because it annoyed the hell out of me.
Oh,
yeah, you know which scene I'm about to talk about, don't you? Yeah. But not getting along with their relationship, which is clearly immature, but it's mutually immature, so you can see it happening between two adults. I've got one mate, for example, that likes to greet me by insulting me, and I'll do the same thing. It's not outside the realms of being an adult. Like, people do that sometimes, and then they go, "Oh, no, just kidding." And the fact that that's the only sign of any sort of immaturity in the film kind of messes it up.
What they try and go for, like, so normally I'd give respect to her not killing Glenn at the end because Henry is a kid. The problem with that character choice, the problem is that Henry, it's like they wanted to balance him being smart and him being immature and overly reactionary. So as a result, when he sees this like mildly suspicious stuff, on the one hand they want to show him immediately jumping to conclusions, but they also want to show him being, smart and, doing stuff like reporting it to the principal or like calling social services, and even drawing up an intensely complicated plan. What I would have done, right, is either I would have embraced the fact that Henry is kind of a psychopath. He just immediately decides, I'm going to kill this person, which it also isn't too unbelievable of a thing for a kid to do. Maybe a kid overthinking and being like, that person's bad, kill him, Or I would have had him exhaust all possible options for what he could do in this situation, like including things that he doesn't do. Like, he doesn't decide to film what's going on. He doesn't even speak to the girl. He doesn't speak to Christina at all to actually ask her what's going on or to tell her that he knows what's going on. He doesn't exhaust all of his possibilities, so therefore you don't feel like him going to kill the stepfather is like a drastic last resort.
It could be used to suggest immaturity, but the film and the script never set that up. They're like, make smart adult decisions and and you're kind of there like, I mean, there's multiple other options that he could take. But even regarding that, you're not using it to set up that he's immature. And you have the mother follow the plan for like a good few months. And I know grief is messing with her, but she acknowledges how wrong it is and does it anyway.
Again, it's trying to suggest the same idea of, there's no other option. But you're an adult, you don't have the excuse that Henry had. Why don't you just tell Christina, I know what's going on. and maybe work with her to like get evidence or something.
Try and get evidence on your own. Like, I get not approaching Christina. That might not be the best solution. Back to the father, then the father gets suspicious. Yeah, not trying to gather any evidence or approach it with any kind of sensitivity. That, to me, that was just, hang on, no, like, don't get me wrong. I get that it was used as a grief response, and oh yeah, it's following the plan so that she can still feel closer to Henry and have conversations with him. I got all of that. It's just really stupid. Yeah, I don't think that's how grief works.
Grief is not very good, and God bless Naomi Watts, because she is trying her best in these scenes. But the instances where they're trying to show her to like mask her grief, but it's really cartoonish and really kind of awkward.
It's an exaggeration. Don't go. It is an exaggeration of something that sometimes people do, which is I'm just going to get on with it, whatever, it's happened, almost as a kind of denial effect. Yeah,
and they act a bit erratic,
Yeah, like I completely get all of that, but like the way it was done just felt so cheap. And like again, they didn't linger with that and show the impact that had. I don't think character was interwoven with plot. It's like they kind of had plot and character as two separate items, because the way it should work in a film is character is plot. So every choice that they make defines character. But it's like they take a break to have a moment that like, oh, this is character, but it doesn't drive forward the narrative at all. Why does the doctor make house calls? What relevance does that have to the film? Like, I don't care. Like, that doctor could have just been there to be like, yeah, he's got a tumor, and left. It wouldn't have made a difference.
So actually, you did provide a good segue into what I was going to say. Because as a result of that, you have like characters and scenes that go nowhere, and this is like another like weirdly sloppy characteristic of this script, where you have like you have characters that are either just there for the sake of the story, or you have characters that are just there and don't do anything like relevant, like in particular. So the doctor you brought up, and I mean, I will admit that he did actually provide a bit of respite from the craziness of the rest of the film, because Lee Pace, aka Ronan from Guardians of the Galaxy, I think he was maybe the most like natural and down to earth actor in this film. I think he got out of it with the most dignity. He actually did a very good job. But I agree, it's like they're setting up his character like he's going to be important. Like, okay, I mean, he could have easily been a love interest to Susan, the mother, but using it, but they're not doing anything with it, and there's not really a reason to have him just kind of there after the hospital stuff. It's like, if you're going to keep him around, give him something meaningful or important.
Just focused on grief, I could justify it as well,
because then there'd be a reason for
I get that. There was a slight suggestion that maybe Peter had the same sort of thing going on, and that would have made sense. Henry died, now they're catching it earlier in Peter. Cool. That would have been great. That would have really worked. And it would have gone with the neglect thing, and it would have done all of that.
Yeah, and Peter even has some line where he's like, "Oh, my head hurts," and then the doctor just puts his hand on his head and said, "No, your head's not hurting, buddy. It's just your heart or something," And it's like, okay, well, I mean, he could have a tumor,
It'd be like, wow, that doctor's bad at his job, for one. If the film had gone down that kind of route, I could have seen it. I honestly think that Henry dying was one of the biggest mistakes that this film had, because they didn't explore grief properly. So what you either have is you keep the child abuse stuff, or you keep the Henry stuff. Don't put them together, because it doesn't work.
Henry around so that he can maybe learn his lesson, or keep youth angle, so therefore we can explore what like maybe a mother who's a bit too dependent on her child would be like afterwards. Again, as a result of this like imbalance, again, you have a film that seems to, at various points, switch. Okay, you have like an opening that's trying to be really, really cute and funny and family friendly, and then all of a sudden you have this shift into like a dark thriller, and then you have this shift into like brain tumor drama about a child dying, and then the grief that comes out afterwards, and then you have to switch back to the thriller stuff. And what's the problem with the direction is that it never feels like we're in the same film. It always feels like we're switching between different movies, and at best what it feels like is a stereotypically cute, funny family sitcom with special episodes woven into it. This like, fairly light, funny episode, and then it's intercut with the special episode where a person at school is getting abused by their parent, or big episode where they kill off the main character or something like that. That's kind of what it feels like at best. And at worst, it feels like you're switching between different films. Like, even the direction weirdly kind of shifts, because you have this like shift between, the brighter, stuff in the more like heartwarming, nice sections, and then you have much like darker lighting. You have that kind of blue tint in the hospital scene.
I think for me, though, one of the biggest problems actually comes in the hospital scene. And for me, it messes up the anti-abuse thing, because it's like the friend comes in, they have their usual.
This is the Sarah Silverman character in the first act, her fellow alcoholic buddy.
Oh, I don't like your fake thing, and then and then he kind of goes, yeah, no, well, I just think you're pretty, which came out of nowhere.
Yeah, that entire conversation came out of nowhere, and the next moment,
like, don't go. I got the kind of, I'm actually kidding when I don't like his thing, which that's fine. But then she like kisses him, and I'm like, what? Why? What?
First viewing, I actually yelled at the screen, "What the fuck?" And I think, and to be fair, I mean that would have been out of nowhere even if he were an adult. And all I could think to myself, well, there's your child abuser. They show like nothing in relation to Glenn being a child abuser or doing anything. You have that, and yet you have this. Why the fuck didn't Henry just write down in his plan, oh, and by the way, your friend basically admitted that she was in love with me?
Yeah, I get why Henry didn't write that down. Obviously, he didn't have his book or the journal and things like that. But like, that moment isn't played like it's uncomfortable and wrong. And that to me is
Henry reacts like it is. Henry kind of goes, like Henry kind of Henry doesn't react like he's like receiving a kiss from a person he loves. He's like, he kind of gives that reaction. Yeah, it's like they didn't realize how just they didn't realize how fucked up that was. And what's especially weird is that the script of this film spent like 20 years in development. Was that in the the script for this film? It was like, I think it was written like in the 90s or something. It was like the script was rewritten over the years. It was in development for a long time, basically.
But the core idea was the same the whole time. Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, I think maybe even the script. Maybe I don't know every detail, but I think that's what it was, right? And you have to think. Was that scene in the script originally? If this person did a whole bunch of rewrites, did that scene survive? When the script got handed and got developed, why did nobody think like, oh, this is quite creepy, let's remove this? Like, when they were shooting it, why did nobody say like, oh, this is a bit unsettling? Like, why during editing, the editor like, I think maybe we can cut this scene out. It's a bit like, what, like, was this film test screened? Like, did nobody like in any of the test screenings for this film write down that scene is creepy, remove it? How the hell did that scene end up in the final cut, is what I'm asking.
I do not understand how that scene survived.
And again, it's like, scene goes nowhere. It literally goes nowhere. It could have come back in any way, but it doesn't come back in any way. Like that, the Sarah Silverman character doesn't even, like, she gets a couple more scenes, but other than that, they're not like focused on a lot, so therefore, again,
they're like conciliatory scenes. There's nothing to do with shared grief about Henry.
And going back to the whole Serenity and Collateral Beauty kind of comparison, I mean, Lord knows it wouldn't be one of these movies if it didn't have insanely weird, poorly delivered, kind of morally effed up message. And this film, it doesn't just have one message, it has several messages. And you touched upon a couple of them yourself, right? But, I mean, it's a film about a murder plan. It's a film that, when it realizes that the murder plan is bad, it doesn't realize that the murder plan is bad because it's immoral. It says it's bad because it's childish, or because the person doing it is a kid. And it's like, yeah, I know that murder is technically childish, but it's also immoral. And the film doesn't seem to realize that Henry is kind of like a vigilante. He's not like a hero trying to like save this innocent girl. He's basically like a vigilante. And based on how they present it, it almost feels like he was just looking for any excuse to like take out someone that he thought was like immoral. And he found this situation and he thought to himself like, okay, you know what, I want to murder this person.
Yeah, like, it was a weirdly precise plan. I mean, don't go on. Yeah. I know that he's a smart kid. I get that. But like, just because you're smart does not mean you are necessarily going to be amazing at planning a murder. Like, that's a very It's a very specialized thing.
And again, him planning out the murder is deeply creepy because it's when you're a kid. I know that kids think about killing other people a lot, but they often just think like, "Oh, I'll stab them," or "Oh, I'll shoot." He draws up an intricate plan on like how to do it and how to get away with it as well.
What?
Again, the problem with doing that isn't that murder is bad, but that it's childish. I guess. I don't know. It's just it's not like the film knows it's wrong, but it doesn't know it's wrong for the right reasons.
We also don't explore the complexity of that morality either. I get the argument, and that's a great argument, but that's almost an argument been done better in pretty much every vigilante movie that has ever been made.
Even like Serenity, at least was kind of aware of the moral dilemma that comes with like, the murder stuff. I mean, it didn't execute it particularly well, but it was aware that killing is a moral dilemma. But this film it doesn't present a moral dilemma. Like, yeah, sure, Susan, when she finds out the plan, she's all like, we are not killing the police commissioner, and that is final. But then she decides to go along with it again.
No, let's just do it. The fact that she says we're not killing the police commissioner makes it seem like it's more because he's the police commissioner than any other reason.
She is like, oh no, that's a bad thing to do, but it comes off more like she's kind of more scolding her kid for wanting to like have a party in her house or something. Like, you are not having a party in my house, and that is final. Not like.
It almost seems like lip service to the fact that it's wrong. It is completely lip service. It's not like that idea constantly comes up, which it should have done. There's that one scene in the film where I go, oh yeah, this is wrong. And then they're like, yeah, no, that's fine. That's all you need. Yeah. No, it isn't.
It really and they decide it's wrong. It's again, as I said before, not because it's immoral, but because the person who's doing it is thinking like a child. And another like really messed up messaging that I got as well from the film is, okay, so the girl who's being abused, to call her a character is like being extremely charitable because she isn't a character at all.
No, she isn't. She is a plot device.
Yeah, and the problem I have, the big issue I have is like I don't necessarily need every like victim character in a film to be the main character or to be the most empowered character. Because there are some films where a character just kind of exists just to be a victim that another person can save. Like in like a lot of like police thrillers or crime thrillers or whatever. I don't have a problem with that. But the problem I have with the way that they do it here is it sends us like very, very condescending message. About like like the white savior narrative in film. This to me is like a victim savior narrative where it's not about the victim. The victim does absolutely nothing. It's all about the other people. And it's basically just sending the message of, if you are a victim, just sit around, someone will eventually save you.
Don't go on. We see like the very classical basic signs that she's unhappy. But that's it. Like, that's all we get.
Yeah, she doesn't even get to say like, oh, I'm being abused.
Let her almost even begin to hint at it, or just talk. Just like actually have a proper conversation with someone and be a character. Seem to have a desire or a want.
It's like outside of it, it's like I don't know. Is she a good person? Is she a bad person? What does she want to be when she grows up? Or the only smidge of characterization is just that she's a dancer and that's it. That's not nearly enough. And like I can think of examples of stuff like this done well, like in Hannibal, the NBC show, which is a great show. You should definitely watch.
Oh, I've seen the whole thing. I know.
Oh, you've seen the whole thing?
Yeah.
Oh, great. So you'll know what I'm talking about. Yeah. For example, in that show, the Margot Berger character. I mean, her first scene is her arm getting broken. And she's definitely not the most empowered character because although she wants to take out her brother Mason, does need the help of others. But that being said, the show does still empower her. It does still give her a sense of agency. And even if you were to remove the whole angle of Mason Verger being this abuser towards her and putting her in this situation, even if you removed all of that, you would still have a character there. You would have a snarky, surly person who still has respect for other people. Like that is a character.
And to be fair, if you wanted to have it purely victim, like again, there are situations where that can work. Like again, from Hannibal, Abigail Hobbs, like she is a victim,
daughter of a serial killer, basically.
Yeah, and he was gonna kill her, but she doesn't exactly get many lines in the first couple of episodes. Really, she doesn't get to really be a character as such. We at least see what happens and see it has an impact. And there are things that she wants, like to get better. Like she's not much of a character until we get to like episode 3, episode 4. But she's still more of a character than Christina is in this movie. I'd say in the first episode, she's more of a character.
And it's a problem again because it just sends out this message of, it's summed up perfectly by the ending scene where not only does she get adopted into the family, but she gets a nickname just like Henry and Peter. It's like she just perfectly slots into that family, and it's basically just saying like, yeah, you know what, you're just a tool, you know, you're just like, you'll get rescued and then you'll perfectly slot into another family. You know, it's like you don't have much to worry about. I mean, when in reality this girl's probably going to grow up with like, you know, years of trauma and whatever, you know, like a lot of like, she's going to have to, I mean, she might be in a nice family, but she's going to have to deal with a lot of shit. You want to get to probably the most jarring sequence in the film by far. In the first act of the film, right, it starts out completely normal. It starts out like nothing's happening. And then Henry just so happens to get a headache during the night, which is a foreshadowing to the brain tumor. And then he gets up, he just sees Christina just like reading a book at night, and then she suddenly goes away, gets into bed, and then you see Glenn's gotten out of his chair of like beer or whatever, and he's like gotten up, and then the scene just kind of ends, right? Which I guess is supposed to be implying that something bad is going to happen. And then the very next morning, like, they're at school, and then all of a sudden Henry just like gets up, might as well have just kicked down the door. He just walks in and goes, "God damn it, Janice, how much longer does this have to go on? What more do you need to see?" And all I could think to myself is, but wait, but you just saw it. There's nothing in the script or in the direction to imply that that wasn't the first time that you'd seen something suspicious. But then, based on the dialogue that they were interacting with each other, that like him speaking to like Janice, the principal, they're basically saying that like he had seen it before, or he had reported it, or like or there'd been big evidence of it, but none of that stuff was shown beforehand. Like, based on the way it's being presented, the principal should have said, "Henry, what the fuck are you talking about?" They bring up things in the film that they never actually show, like about her being absent from school, about her having injuries, or about her, like, you know, having visits to the emergency room and stuff. They bring it up in that scene, and later on, but we didn't see that. So
yeah, like that came out of nowhere for me. I was suddenly there like, what? If they had just shown little things like just had her been missing from her desk once, it's not like you're going to do it a bunch, but once. You got to do it once.
It's not the scene that you do 20 minutes in, or if you're going to do the scene 20 minutes in, establish that before that point that Henry has already tried reporting it or has been noticing it or something like that. You know, it's like this is the kind of scene that you do like at the end of the second act, you know, the beginning of the third act or whatever. But you have this scene and it feels like it happens way too early in the film. And again, it refers to stuff that we never see. On a final note as well, to make that scene even more annoying, Janice says like, "Oh, I can't open a thing without conclusive evidence," and then he's just like, "Fine, I will do this without you." But she just said that she wouldn't do it without conclusive evidence. Why don't you get conclusive evidence?
No, I get that because, you know, he doesn't feel that he can get conclusive evidence. Fine. What? She's not going to follow up on that. He's just gone, yeah, I'm going to basically investigate a guy who she's not even sure has done anything wrong.
If he's saying like, "Oh, fine, I will handle this without you," you know, that could imply something. Like maybe the principal would have to call the mother and say like, "Henry's been acting a bit crazy. You know, he's been coming to me with all these like things, accusations or whatever. You don't really believe Henry, and you don't believe that anything is going on. So therefore, when a scene like that happens, and the script hasn't primed you for it, so therefore, it just kind of feels like we're just leapfrogging from one bit.
This is my biggest problem. So I believed it right from the off. You know, I kind of looked at the way that was set up and went, okay, that's dodgy as shit. Like when I saw the light stuff and when he disappeared and when it had gone in the room, I was like, okay, not great. Because I connected that well visually. I completely disagree with you that him's bad, actually. I liked him. But the problem that I have is that I cared because I have a general hatred of the kind of situation, and from my own experiences of kind of like just hearing about that kind of thing, seeing stories about that kind of thing, I've got, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I do as well. I definitely do as well.
To that, the film itself did not make me care. Because Christina wasn't a character, because it wasn't focused on enough, it was a bit like, okay, I should have been absolutely horrified. I did get the response of a poor girl. That's horrible. The film didn't evoke the disgust that it should have done. Okay, I care about this because it's horrible as an issue. I don't care about it because Henry cares about it. You can get even the coldest person in the world to care if you move it correctly in this scene, but you don't. Like, not one issue in this film, in my opinion, is treated with the appropriate weight. Grief is fucked up. It's basically ignored. It's given lip service and it's ignored. Idea that murder is wrong, given lip service, ignored. The child abuse, given a little bit more weight, but we don't get to see any sort of developing impact on the victim. We don't get to see the child being particularly scared of him either.
All we really get is just her like correcting Susan when Susan calls him her father.
I understood what was going on. I got it. I believed it. But
you didn't think it was done well.
No, I thought it was done horribly. And I get that it was trying to be, oh yeah, in real life it's subtle. Yes, it is. Is it that subtle? Yeah, it could be. Probably not, but it could be. It could be that subtle. Problem is that you don't assign the emotion to that subtlety, which you need to do. You need to set up that unsettling atmosphere, and they don't do it. And I get that the mother's alarm bell doesn't ring. Henry doesn't seem to do anything about it. And before he sees everything seems fine. And I get the reason they're doing that. But it's a scene afterwards, like Henry seems oddly okay. Doesn't try and broach anything with Christina. He doesn't try to, which I can sort of understand, but I'm not sure whether a child would broach anything or not.
The reason why I brought up the whole like why don't they just speak to Christina is because for all they know, Christina could be all for the idea of reporting it or even for killing him. It's like we know so little about her that we don't even know how she would react. So there's no certainty of she just won't tell them or she'll just push them away.
Yeah, we never get to see her react either.
It's just her looking sad and that's it. It's weird that this film is so conservative with implying anything. It did have a PG-13 rating in the US, so it could have very easily gotten away with it having heavier implications. Split did this aspect a lot better. In that film, it's showing the backstory of Casey, and it's showing that she was actually abused by her uncle. It doesn't come out and say it, just shows it. But instantly from that time, when you see it, it's going to happen. You know that it is happening. Like, I remember when you and I were watching it with our friends, like, as soon as the bit came up where he was pretending to be an animal, everyone was just like, oh, no, oh, fuck, oh, shit. It wasn't just us that recognized it. Our friends recognized it too. Well, we all recognized it instantly.
Like, you had this feeling of, oh, God, no.
I think this is even better comparison. At the end of the film, when they do the reveal that she has the scars, right? Like, they actually show that. I mean, it's intercut with that flashback, obviously, of the uncle saying, I'm going to take care of you now. But, so there is something visually for you to be like, that's definitely happening. He's definitely been physically, like, awful to her. So all of that stuff, it's like, that was a more convincing portrayal of abuse than this film. I mean, it helps obviously that like the Casey character is like the main character next to like Kevin. Like, she's the main character, sure, but even if she were just a side character, just from that stuff alone, we would believe it and we would invest in it. But this film doesn't have anything like that. I didn't even see a single like bruise, which would have been like, oh, okay, most likely something bad is happening. And I think it's even more undermined by the dance stuff at the end, which I didn't buy at all, because if I was the principal and I was seeing that, right, I wouldn't think to myself, oh, this is proof that like, she was actually being abused. What I'd think to myself is, oh, okay, all of the physical stuff, that's because she was just training really hard for this complicated dance that she's doing, and maybe she was kind of a bit stressed about it. Maybe she like injured herself accidentally, like maybe, I don't know, she exerted herself or whatever. If I were the principal in that situation, that's probably what I'd think. I might not totally commit to that idea, but that's probably what I'd think upon seeing that. The dance feels more like it would be the perfect excuse or alibi or explanation, rather than the thing that prompts her to finally do it. What would you think in that situation?
I don't understand how it's conclusive. Like, she's like, oh, I need conclusive proof. That's not conclusive. Like, I get maybe it's her going, oh, I don't need conclusive proof anymore. Well, then show more of her noticing some shit happening. You can even keep Christina is almost an observational figure throughout the film, which is what she is. She's not a character. She's almost something to look at voyeuristically as a deduction piece. It's almost equivalent of a bit of evidence from a Sherlock Holmes story. That's what she is. And that's still fine. I mean, problematic, but, okay, right. But you need to show the other characters reacting to that. That's what you need. Like, you need that. Because without human impact being properly shown, people don't buy it. And if you're trying to do it for a big twist, like, set it up better. For God's sake, set it up better. Have the principal already being there, like, I want to do something. I'm not sure I have enough yet, And then seeing that, and then seeing all the extent of the bruising, that's different to saying I need conclusive proof. Like, with a little bit of line changing, that would have worked.
To me, like, even if she danced and then, like, you saw on her body that she did have a lot of bruises, again, I think to myself, if I were the principal, I might think, like, oh, that's why, because she was just, like, practicing really hard.
Yeah, no, that doesn't. No, I mean, that is prime, because if you do, have you ever worked with children before?
No, I haven't.
No, I'm obviously not a teacher, but I've done the children's summer camp, and they do kind of brief you on the kinds of bruising to look out for that might be a case of physical and sexual abuse and that kind of thing. Like, you get trained to do that. So I can understand her making the jump to that. It's not like that wasn't already established. Like, Henry goes, you've seen the bruises on her arm, which the principal doesn't even deny.
I mean, it's an example of show don't tell, because we never see them. I get what you mean, yeah.
I get that maybe it's a bit shocking in the dance, but, like, it's not any more conclusive than it was originally. So I don't get why it's such a shift for her. It's not like Christina was, barely able to dance or crying her eyes out, or anything like that. I don't see what triggered it. She was dancing with bruises that were already known about, and they'd chosen to do nothing about it. There's nothing really about the principal's situation that's changed, because there's no character change in the principal. There's no change that can happen in the situation, which means that doesn't make emotional sense. And it wouldn't even have been hard. Have another scene with the principal and Christina, in a scene together where the principal notices one or two things and goes, I'm starting to change my mind. Like, not literally saying it, but, like, you see a look of concern as she leaves.
It's just a deus ex machina. That's all the principal's role in the film. It's just a deus ex machina to end the film. Like, I don't know how this script survived, like, 20 years. It's disjointed, it's ugly, it's not the heartwarming drama that it wants to be, but it's also not a good exploration of abuse, grief. It just doesn't work. There's this other scene as well that I don't know what you got out of this scene, but I have no clue what that magic trick scene means. I guess it's supposed to be symbolic or something, but I don't get why it's there in the story. The bit at the end, perfectly honest, right? When he said, I'm going to bring out my brother Henry, I actually wondered if that was going to be a twist. I actually wondered if they were going to actually have Henry come out of the box and reveal that he was alive. Because they don't show a funeral. They don't show what happens to his body. So I think to myself, like, oh, are we going to do a twist where maybe we go back and we reveal that, like, he had actually just faked his death somehow? His actual death scene was quite random and weird. So I thought to myself, okay, well, maybe he's just faking it, But no, he's explodes fake snow out of this coffin, I guess, and it sprays over the crowd, and then the crowd gives, like, a standing ovation. I don't understand that. I guess it's just supposed to be some sort of heartwarming sentiment that, like, even though Henry's dead, he's there in spirit or something.
I mean,
like,
yeah, I guess.
Scattering his ashes, it's like over a crowd of people. It's like, okay, that's I wouldn't applaud in that situation. I'd be pretty confused.
Sum up, I guess. I wouldn't recommend the film.
It's just relentlessly annoying and frustrating. I'm sure what they probably wanted was to have a film that kind of leaves you thinking, like, yeah, I'm going to get off my ass and do something the next time I see something bad happening, but it's not executed well enough, so you're just baffled, annoyed, confused,
What if you want to watch a film that's about child abuse, go watch Mysterious Skin. It's a lot better.
Much like Disturbia or something.
So next time, I'm going to call it a horror double feature again, similar to our Dracula video, but this time we're looking at The Invisible Man from 1933 and The Invisible Man from 2020.
That will be part of another 2-parter episode that will also involve us looking at the 2019 version of Black Christmas as well as the original. See you next time on episode 10. A little bit confused by what you said about how the film wasn't interrogating the thing about bystander syndrome. Susan did get involved, though, didn't
She
she?
did. It wasn't her. It wasn't her decision to get involved. Like it
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Because Henry
making.
basically spurred her onto it posthumously.
Yeah, exactly. It's shown to be almost an irrational grief response. I know that she then decides at the end, actually decides she's going to confront Glenn. Glenn catches her, and then she's stuck in the catch-22. She doesn't change her mind on killing him because she's using her own decision making based on the evidence and all of that. She does it because she realizes her son is a child. So you've been quite happy for your son to run your life up until that point. You now realizing that he's a child shouldn't make a difference because A, he was a child anyway, you idiot. B, throughout the film, you've been quite happy to let him make your financial decisions, decisions on how you raise your other child, to the point that the other child is kind of raising himself like Henry raised him because he clearly saw him as more of a parent, as you can see from the baking scene. I don't understand why you suddenly going, oh, you're a kid, because you know he's your son and you've already let him run your life. You already know he's a child and you already know he's got a chance to the world. You just didn't care because he was smarter than you. That's the difference.